What's up, y'all? This is Lou. So today let's discuss liberalism, the Young Turks, Ana Kasparian, that whole hullabaloo that's going on with them. Let me just give you my take on the whole thing. So liberals, even those who wouldn't classify themselves as liberals, uh, have a long and storied history of essentially turning on leftists when it suits their interests. This happened during the Spanish Civil War. A lot of the reasons why you don't hear anything about Spain during World War II is because they were undergoing civil conflict at the time and basically had to sit out the World War because of their own internal strife. And at the crux of that, there was a moment where the more liberal, politically liberal people essentially turned on the leftists, the socialists, and kind of paved the way for the fascists to take hold. Now, I'm sure that's not the first time you've ever heard of that, particularly in that region of the world, but this thing happens. And there's a YouTuber by the name of Hakim, who I don't always agree with, but I think comes from the right place, who did a video on the roots of liberalism. And if you check that video out, it'll give you a good perspective on why this always seems to happen. Liberals are not necessarily for the working class or for marginalized people. Now, in U.S. history, you will hear this criticism laced all throughout activists who are to the left of liberals, at least socially. They may have been conservative because of their religion, but they wanted something like, say, racial justice. And a lot of who they would criticize would be, particularly in the U.S., white liberals. Malcolm X was known for criticizing this, as well as other Nation of Islam Muslims were known for criticizing this, but not just them. A lot of minority activists all throughout U.S. history have criticized liberals for this exact reason, that on some level they are willing to capitulate to the other side, which tends to allow for the pulling of essentially whole demographics or the entire country to the right politically. And you're kind of seeing that play out. Now, a lot of people who have been critical of the Young Turks in the past have said that they're kind of like a puppy mill for right wingers. Dave Rubin, being one. There are a couple others who I can't remember off the top of my head. But and people wondering like why this always happens. But when you attempt to placate centrist ideology or come off as the enlightened centrist, you're almost always going to get pulled in that direction, or at least to some extreme, where you end up either, especially if you're from a majority demographic, where you either try to explain activism to minorities to hold yourself to even a higher standard, whereas minorities might be like, hey, like you're kind of getting out of hand and we're not down with what you're doing. And then you have an outburst towards the minorities and say, well, you because you guys aren't doing it right. Or the other direction, where it's like, hey, minorities, you need to calm down. You're the problem. This is what we're seeing in terms of Anna's take on trans people, because it's like she's taking that classic perspective of, hey, trans people, you're being a little too loud, or you're being a little too militant. That's a word that's often used, militant. However, how do you be condemning of someone for militants who constantly has to argue for their own existence? As a multiracial person who grew up in the South, I understand that level of sensitivity because, somebody like me, I mean, there's black people and then there's white people and then there's me. I'm like their worst fears in a living person. Oh my God, the races are mixing and look at this is the result. Look at this. What even is this? Like multiracial people who grew up in and yes, we would get that from both sides. We get that from black people or from white people. And then being that as my father's Afro-Hispanic, the Latinos are even like, oh my God, like what happened? How did you get here? But so when you have to when you do have to advocate for your own existence, your own right to have rights, and which Anna has expressed that she does believe that trans people deserve, basic rights, housing, healthcare, this, that, and the other. And I have heard her also say that they also do have a right to determine what medical care they should and shouldn't get, given the approval of a doctor, a medical supervision or whatever. However, when you start to criticize from your privileged position, and regardless of whether you think you're privileged or not, yes, as a woman, you have less privilege than men of your demographic, but you have more than minorities and measurably more than minority women. And when you do have the ability to, in recent times, she's been more applauded by the right for being willing to engage Ben Shapiro, for being willing to engage people like that, even on their own terms. You subject yourself to kind of being pulled more in that direction, especially when you receive criticism from your perspectives, and rather than engage with your critics, especially the ones that are friends of yours or friendly to you or you've known for a long time. See, that's the most frustrating thing about all this is the refusal to engage. The refusal to say, okay, listen, you have a problem with what I said. That's cool. Here's what we'll do. We'll set up a debate. You willing to debate Ben Shapiro? Set up a debate with Emma Vigeland. Set up a debate with Vosh. Set up a debate with anyone who can intelligently criticize your perspective. But when you refuse to engage, you come off as disingenuous. When you just say, nope, I'm right. I know what I'm talking about. You're wrong. And never the twain shall meet. That's just the way it is. And then you antagonize. I honestly don't know what function that serves. Like, is it the opposition to saying that the left tends to infight? So contribute to it? Throw gas on the fire? I don't see how that makes sense. But at its core, liberalism tends to lend to this ideology that in order to gain small victories, you must be willing to sacrifice let's say, just shut up about this issue. And that may be a valid point. However, again, when you're dealing with people who have had to advocate for their own existence, that's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask to say, okay, hey, listen, these people just don't want you over here. So don't go over there and cause a problem. Especially when you grew up in a country that decries freedom, that says that personal freedom above all things. Then why can't I go over there? Why can't I be over there? Why can't I say what I want? Why can't I advocate? Why are you now you who are supposed to have my back, now you're telling me to shut up? At the end of the day, it's grievance. It's grievance issues. And a lot of times this comes from personal grievances that someone may have, and looking at media, consuming media or consuming articles that validate their grievances rather than questions them. So, Anna has aired some grievances about terms. And when that happens, what I would do is I would set up a well-thought discussion surrounding it. Especially with people who may be disappointed in me, like find out what's going on from their perspective and be open. Like you're saying you're at this point in your life, you're the most open you've ever been. Okay, well, show that and engage both sides, not just the side that tells you you're awesome, not just the side that's love bombing you, because for once you're validating their position. This has been Lou on your left.